Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's session Leveraging Threat Intelligence for Security, a beginner's guide. I am Reenal Vikeria, and I'll be your host for the day. Before we get started, we would like to go over a few house rules. For our attendees, the session will be in listen only mode and will last for an hour, out of which the last 15 minutes will be dedicated to Q&A. If you have any questions during the webinar, to organizers or a speaker, use the Q&A window. Also, if you face any audio video challenges, please check your internet connection or you may log out and log in again. Now, about a speaker. Mark Mackensen is a senior cyber threat analyst at Paylocity. Mark Mackensen brings over a decade of cybersecurity expertise with a specific focus on cyber threat intelligence, CTI, and threat hunting. Currently leading Paylocity CTI and threat hunting programs, Mark has been pivotal in developing these initiatives from inception to operational maturity. This includes crafting tailored methodologies, frameworks, and protocols that enhance incident response capabilities and fortify overall security posture. Prior to Paylocity, Mark managed a global team of threat intelligence analysts at General Dynamics Information Technology for the Department of Defense. There, he focused on leveraging the MITRE ATT&CK framework, improving intelligence sharing, and guiding a team through comprehensive threat intelligence cycles, ultimately delivering actionable intelligence critical for security operations. Mark leadership extended to managing the West Coast Threat Intelligence Team, emphasizing operational excellence and strategic mentorship. So, without any further delay, I would now hand over the session to our speaker.
Thank you. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this presentation on leveraging threat intelligence for security, a beginner's perspective. My name is Mark Mackensen, and as stated, I'm a senior cyber threat analyst at Paylocity. And today we will dive into the basics of threat intelligence, its importance, and how to leverage it effectively to enhance your organization's security posture. This session is designed for beginners, but I hope that even seasoned professionals will find valuable insights and practical strategies. So let's get started. I'd like to thank everybody for joining me today. And before we dive into the content, I was going to tell you a little bit about myself, but you heard some of that already. A few things that weren't mentioned. I'm currently the only threat intel analyst on the team, and I was hired specifically to build the threat intelligence program from the ground up. This has included developing and implementing the overall CTI strategy, collecting and analyzing the data from various sources, creating and maintaining documentations and threat intelligence repositories, and integrating that threat intelligence into existing security tools and workflows. And on a personal note, I enjoy cooking, snowboarding, playing soccer, and playing the piano. So let's talk about the purpose of today's webinar. In the current threat landscape, threat intelligence has become a crucial tool against evolving risks. And leveraging threat intelligence involves gathering data from various sources, such as open source feeds to commercial platforms, to gain insights into threat patterns and incorporate this data into the organization's defense strategies. So during this webinar, we're going to cover several key topics, starting with the importance of threat intelligence in modern security frameworks, the various sources of threat intelligence and their roles in creating a robust security posture, how to harness the power of threat intelligence to fortify your security defenses, common challenges faced in implementing threat intelligence solutions, best practices for effective implementation of your threat intelligence, the role of threat intelligence in enhancing cybersecurity strategies, and for a bonus topic, we're going to see just how many times I can use the words threat intelligence in a single slide. But by the end of this session, hopefully you'll have an understanding of threat intelligence and practical strategies for leveraging it effectively. So here's the agenda for today's webinar. You're probably wondering, how is an agenda different from going over what we're going to cover? And that's a great question, but unfortunately we don't have time for it because we have a very full schedule. So we're going to start with an introduction to threat intelligence, understanding its definition and its importance in cybersecurity. Next, we're going to explore the different types of threat intelligence, including operational and strategic, and the various sources from which we can gather this intelligence. We're then going to dive into the threat intelligence life cycle, discussing the 6 phases that make up this cycle. Following that, we will look at how to integrate threat intelligence into your security operations, including its role in SecOps and triage and incident response. We're also going to cover vulnerability management with threat intelligence, focusing on identifying and prioritizing vulnerabilities and making risk-based decisions. Then we'll talk about proactive risk mitigation. That'll be another key topic where we discuss threat hunting and predictive analysis. Next, talk about implementing threat intelligence solutions, the tools and technologies involved, and how to integrate these solutions with your existing security frameworks. Going to address common challenges and solutions faced by organizations when implementing threat intelligence, providing practical advice on overcoming these obstacles. Towards the end, we're going to share best practices for beginners in threat intelligence, including tips for effective threat intelligence, as well as some examples of practical applications for threat intelligence of any organization. And finally, we will have a Q&A session where you can ask any questions you may have about the topics that I've covered. I want to state right now, I know that I'm aware that this is a lot of information very quickly, and I apologize for that. But if you miss anything, this is being recorded, and so you should be able to hopefully review it, and you are always welcome to reach out to me or EC Council with questions. So let's get started on our first topic, an introduction to threat intelligence. Let's start with the basics. Definition. Simply put, threat intelligence is data that is collected, processed, and analyzed to understand a threat actor's motives, targets, and attack behaviors. I generally try to avoid putting too much text on my slides because we've all been to presentations where the person is reading word for word what they wrote and we're all crying from boredom. But I believe that this one was one that needed to be written down to really soak it in. The information is gathered from, various sources such as open source intelligence, commercial threat data feeds, dark web monitoring, and more. And there's a lot of definitions out there that are all very similar to this definition. However, I chose this one specifically because I personally like the use of the word data. Threat intelligence is not simply data. It's, again, data that's been collected, processed, and analyzed. And without the steps of processing and analysis, it's simply raw information. There's no context. It would be the same as if I sent out logs to the organization and didn't tell anybody what they were about. How does that help? The primary goal of threat intelligence is to provide actionable insights that can help organizations understand the threats that they face, anticipate potential attacks, and develop strategies to defend against these threats. And that isn't done effectively by blasting out a lot of noise. Threat intelligence analysts can act as a filter and an aggregator of that data and turn it into something useful. So why is threat intelligence important in cybersecurity? Well, in today's world, cyber threats are constantly evolving. Attackers are becoming more sophisticated, using advanced tactics to breach security defenses, and traditional security measures such as firewalls and antivirus software are no longer sufficient to protect against these advanced threats. Threat intelligence provides visibility into threats before they strike, allowing organizations to take proactive measures to prevent attacks. It helps in prioritizing patching for critical vulnerabilities, detecting and responding to threats early, and understanding the tactics, techniques, and procedures, or TTPs, used by attackers. And by leveraging threat intelligence, organizations can enhance their overall security posture, reduce the risk of successful attacks, and ensure the safety of their assets and data. Now that we have a basic understanding of what threat intelligence is and why it's important, let's move on to the different types of threat intelligence. So, the different types, starting with strategic intelligence. Strategic intelligence provides a broad overview of an organization's present and hopefully predictive future threat landscape. And its goal is to inform resource decisions to be made by security leadership. This intelligence might be risk-oriented and presented through reports or briefings, and it requires human interaction and analytical thought to forecast future trends and evaluate emergency adversary tactics, techniques, and procedures, TTPs. Next is operational intelligence. Operational intelligence is knowledge about ongoing cyber attacks, events, and campaigns. It provides specialized insights that enable individuals to understand the nature, intent, and timing of specific attacks as they're occurring. This type of intelligence is often technical and can include details like attack vectors, exploited vulnerabilities, command and control domains, etc. And it's particularly useful for system architects, administrators, and security staff who are directly involved in the defense of an organization. And finally, we have tactical intelligence. This plays a role in providing insights into the immediate threat landscape, the specific indicators and tools and infrastructure and TTPs employed by a threat actor to achieve their goals. I'd like to note that I have seen this broken up into tactical threat intelligence and technical threat intelligence as well, stating that tactical is purely the TTPs and technical is IOCs and other infrastructure tools, etc. Moving on to sources of threat intelligence. Threat intelligence is gathered from various sources, starting with OSINT, open source intelligence. This is publicly available information from the internet, news sites, social media, blogs, and more. I know this may seem like a simple one or obvious source to a lot of people, but this is extremely useful, and I cannot stress enough how important OSINT is. The idea behind it is that a rising tide lifts all boats. By sharing any intel that we gather with the larger community, everyone who participates benefits. And the only people who really lose are the threat actors. We have a common enemy, and we're all trying to protect our resources as best we can in this evolving world of threats. And it may sound a little bit corny, but we are in this together. And personally, I'm very proud to be part of this community, and I'm very grateful to everybody who contributes to it. Next, we have commercial threat data feeds. These are paid services that provide streams of data on potential cyber threats. Some of it may include observations that have also been gathered from OSINT, all in one place for you. Maybe a service that this company provides is an aggregation of all the blogs and news out there, or they're providing filtering for the most important things. And it typically also provides things such as suspicious domains, IP addresses, malware hashes, etc. Next, we have dark web monitoring. This is intelligence that's gathered by infiltrating private or maybe encrypted channels used by threat groups, such as dark web forums and messaging apps. Threat actors will regularly post information about what they're doing. I'm not sure why, but sometimes they're seeking help, sometimes they're selling things, and sometimes they're even bragging about their most recent activity. Next is internal sources. This is data from within the organization, security logs, network telemetry, vulnerability scans, things of that nature. And so by understanding these different types of threat intelligence and their sources, organizations can better tailor their threat intelligence programs to meet their specific needs and goals. Next, we're going to explore the threat intelligence lifecycle. Okay. Now that we have a clear understanding of the types of threat intelligence, we're going to discuss the threat intelligence lifecycle. You may have seen these 6 phases in a nicely designed picture before that has a circle with arrows pointing from one phase to the next and visually creating the cycle and showing you how it repeats. But unfortunately, most of those images are copyrighted, so I will not be showing any of them on this slide. However, you can easily Google the threat intelligence lifecycle and you can see it for yourself. The intelligence lifecycle is a process that turns raw data that we capture into actionable intelligence. And this process consists of 6 phases. First one is direction. The direction phase involves setting goals for your intelligence program. This is a crucial first step. And this includes understanding and articulating the information assets and business processes that need to be protected, the potential impacts of losing those assets or interrupting the processes, the types of intelligence required to protect them, and the priorities for what needs to be protected. If you've ever heard the phrase priority intel requirements or PIRs before, this is what they're referring to. Next is collection. The collection phase is the process of gathering information to address the most important intelligence requirements as stated in direction. This can include pulling metadata and logs from internal networks, subscribing to threat data feeds from industry organizations such as Information Sharing and Analysis Centers, or ISACs, cybersecurity vendors, conducting conversations and targeted interviews, scanning news and websites and blogs, everything that I said in the previous slide for ingesting this collection of data. Next, we have processing. Processing involves transforming collected data into a format that's usable by the organization. Almost all raw data collected needs to be processed in some form, whether it's by humans or machines. And this may include extracting indicators from reports or articles and adding them to a CSV file to import to your SIM, or extracting indicators from a phishing email and enriching them with other information to provide context or attribution to a specific threat actor or campaign. Next is analysis. Analysis is the process of turning information into intelligence to inform decision making. This involves determining what has happened, what the incident might mean for the organization, and which actions to take. And the form in which the information is presented is especially important to ensure that it's understandable and actionable for the decision maker. Number 5, we have dissemination. Dissemination involves getting the finished intelligence output to the places that it needs to go. This includes determining what intelligence is needed by each department or audience, how it should be organized, how often updates should be provided, and through what media the intelligence should be disseminated. And just like I did for OSINT, I want to stress how important for analysis and dissemination the presentation of threat intelligence is, and the audience for whom you're giving it to, who that is. The reality is that your presentation of intelligence goes directly hand in hand with the content. You may have a lot of really important things to say, but if you're providing a 10-page report of dry facts and analysis, it might not reach the ears that it needs to be effective. An easy example is that your CISO has a million things to do on their plate, and they're trying to balance and their hands are full. And they won't have a lot of time that they can dedicate to reading an extensive detailed report. So an easy solution may be having an executive summary section at the top or a bottom line that they can observe to help get the most important and relevant intelligence out immediately, something short and sweet. And this is something that I've seen people in the intelligence community struggle with at times. Sometimes people believe that you don't need to have graphics or colors or anything interesting really besides the data in your reports. But humans, we eat with our eyes first. And just like with food, if something doesn't look appealing, it can affect how we ingest it. And I say this very hypocritically, as I'm aware as I present to you today with white and black slides and simple graphics. But hopefully there's some fun that we can have at the end here. Last is feedback. The feedback phase is about gathering regular input from each group to understand their requirements and make adjustments as needed and as their priorities change. This guides all phases of the life cycle and helps determine what types of data to collect, how to process and enrich the data, how to analyze this information, and how to disseminate it. So by following the threat intelligence lifecycle, organizations can ensure that their intelligence efforts are structured, efficient, and effective in providing actionable insights to enhance their posture. Next, we're going to discuss how threat intelligence can be used in vulnerability management. So there are many ways that threat intelligence can be implemented into an organization. Unfortunately, we don't have time to go over all of them, so I'm only going to touch on a couple, but one of them is vulnerability management. Vulnerability management involves identifying, assessing, and mitigating vulnerabilities in your organization's systems and applications. And threat intelligence plays a role in this process by providing real-time information about newly discovered vulnerabilities, their severity, and the likelihood of exploitation. By integrating threat intelligence into your vulnerability management process, you can prioritize the vulnerabilities based on the current threat landscape. So this means focusing on vulnerabilities that are being actively exploited by threat actors, rather than simply addressing all vulnerabilities indiscriminately. In 2022, there were over 25,000 vulnerabilities published by the National Vulnerability Database, or NVD. In 2023, that number increased to almost 29,000. And Security Magazine predicts that in 2024, that number will increase to almost 35,000. It's essential then, for example, that if threat intelligence indicates that a particular vulnerability is being targeted by ransomware groups, it should be prioritized for patching or mitigation. And I'd like to take a moment right now to give a shout out to the vulnerability management team at Paylocity that I work with, because sometimes they almost make me feel arbitrary in my assistance because they are so on top of any new information that is being dropped. But that's a good thing, right? So traditional vulnerability management in the past often involved trying to patch as many vulnerabilities as possible, which can be resource intensive and may not always address the most critical threats. Whereas a risk-based approach informed by threat intelligence allows organizations to allocate resources more effectively by focusing on vulnerabilities that pose the highest risk. Threat intelligence provides context about the exploitability of vulnerabilities and threat actors targeting them and the potential impact on the organization. And this helps security teams make informed decisions about which vulnerabilities to address first, how to allocate resources, and what mitigation strategies. For instance, if a vulnerability is associated with a high-profile threat actor that is known for targeting organizations specifically in your industry, it should likely be prioritized over vulnerabilities that are less likely to be exploited. Additionally, threat intelligence can provide insights into the TTPs used by attackers, which can enable your security teams to implement compensating security controls or additional defenses while those patches are being deployed. So to sum up, by leveraging threat intelligence and vulnerability management, organizations can enhance their ability to identify and prioritize vulnerabilities, make informed risk-based decisions, and allocate your resources more effectively. Now we're going to discuss how to integrate threat intelligence into your security operations. So security operations, or SecOps teams, are responsible for monitoring and responding to security incidents within an organization. And so our role as threat analysts are integrating threat intelligence into SecOps to enhance their ability to detect, analyze, and respond to threats more effectively. Threat intelligence provides the context and insights needed to make informed decisions quickly, reducing the time and effort required to investigate and respond to security incidents. So triage is a critical part of the SecOps team's responsibilities. It involves filtering through a large volume of alerts to identify which ones are genuine threats and require immediate attention. Threat intelligence helps by enriching alerts with additional context, such as information about known malicious IP addresses, domains, and malware. And this enrichment enables SecOps teams to prioritize alerts more accurately, therefore reducing the number of false positives and focusing on the most critical threats. For example, if an alert is generated for a suspicious IP address, threat intelligence can provide information about previous sightings of this IP and its association with known attack types, any relevant threat actor activity. This context allows the SecOps teams to make faster and more accurate decisions about whether they need to investigate this alert further. So when a security incident occurs, threat intelligence can also play a role in incident response, such as helping the incident response team understand the nature of the attack, the tactics, techniques, and procedures used by the attackers, and the potential impact on the organization. This information is important for containing the threat and eradicating it from the network and recovering from the incident. Threat intelligence can also provide early warnings of potential threats, allowing incident response teams to proactively defend against them. For example, by monitoring dark web forums and other closed sources, threat intelligence can identify discussions about new vulnerabilities or planned attacks, enabling the organization to take preventative measures before the threat materializes. So in summary, integrating threat intelligence into security operations enhances its efficiency and effectiveness of security operations and incident response teams. It provides context and insights needed to prioritize alerts, respond to incidents quickly, and proactively defend against emerging threats. Next, we're going to discuss how to use threat intelligence for proactive risk mitigation. Starting with threat hunting. Threat hunting is the process of actively searching for threats within your network before they can cause harm. Rather than waiting for alerts from security tools, which may or may not always alert you in the first place as to malicious activity that's taking place, threat hunters can use threat intelligence to identify indicators of compromise, or IOCs, unusual patterns, or suspicious behavior that might indicate a breach or malicious activity taking place. Threat intelligence provides threat hunters with valuable information about the latest attacker TTPs, known IOCs, and emerging threats. And this enables them to search for signs of compromise within the organization's environment. The two departments form a symbiotic relationship where they're both feeding off of each other for their own mutual benefit. For example, if threat intelligence reports that a specific malware strain is being used in targeted attacks against similar organizations within your vertical, threat hunters can look for signs of that malware in their own network. And by leveraging threat intelligence, they can identify and mitigate that before they cause significant damage. And that investigation may yield additional IOCs or patterns that they can then provide to threat intelligence. Next is predictive analysis. This involves using threat intelligence to anticipate future threats and take preemptive action to mitigate them. By analyzing trends, patterns, and historical data, organizations can predict potential attack vectors and vulnerabilities that might be targeted by threat actors. Threat intelligence provides insights into emerging threats, changes in attacker behavior, and new vulnerabilities. And this information allows organizations to adjust their defenses accordingly. For example, if predictive analysis indicates an increase in ransomware attacks targeting a specific industry, organizations in that sector can strengthen their defenses against ransomware, such as updating incident response plans, ensuring that critical data is backed up and protected. And predictive analysis also helps organizations prioritize their security efforts by understanding which threats are most likely to materialize, and then security teams can focus their resources on mitigating those risks rather than spreading themselves too thin across all potential threats. So in summary, proactive risk mitigation involves using threat intelligence for threat hunting and predictive analysis, and these strategies enable your company to stay ahead of attackers, identify the threats early, and take preemptive measures to protect their assets and data. Next, we're going to discuss how to implement threat intelligence solutions effectively. This will focus on the tools and technologies available and how to integrate them within your existing security framework. So tools and technologies. There are various tools available, and they can be broadly categorized into a few of the following. First is threat intelligence platforms, or TIPs. TIPs are designed to aggregate, analyze, and disseminate threat intelligence from multiple sources. They help organizations manage and make sense of the vast amount of data that is ingested. It helps provide actionable insights. And a few examples of popular TIPs include Recorded Future, Anomaly, and Threat Connect. Next is Security Information and Event Management Systems, or SIEMs. SIEMs collect and analyze log data from across the organization's IT infrastructure. And by integrating threat intelligence feeds with SIEMs, organizations can enhance their ability to detect and respond to threats in real time. A couple of examples of SIEMs include Splunk, QRadar, and Exabeam. Next, we have endpoint detection and response solutions, or EDRs. EDRs provide visibility into endpoint activities and behaviors, and integrating threat intelligence with EDR solutions helps identify malicious activities on endpoints and take timely action. A few examples include CrowdStrike Falcon and Carbon Black. And finally, we have threat intelligence feeds. These are streams of threat data provided by various sources, sometimes including commercial vendors, open source projects, and government agencies. They provide real-time information about emerging threats, malicious IPs, domains, and more. One example is Alien Vault or FBI InfraGard. So implementing threat intelligence solutions is not just about selecting the right tools. It's also about integrating these tools with your existing security frameworks to create a cohesive and efficient security operation. So some of these might include a centralized dashboard. If you can integrate your threat intelligence feeds and tools into a single place to provide a unified view of the threat landscape, It enables your teams to correlate data from different sources and then make informed decisions quickly. Automation and orchestration. You can use security orchestration, automation, and response platforms, or SOARs, to automate the collection, analysis, and dissemination of threat intelligence. Automation greatly reduces the manual workload on security analysts, and it can ensure timely and consistent responses to threats. Next is collaboration and communication. As a threat intelligence analyst, you want to foster collaboration between different security teams, such as SecOps, vulnerability management, incident response, governance, risk and compliance, or GRC, and business resilience, to name a few. Share your threat intelligence across these teams to ensure that every department and everybody has the information they need to protect their part of the organization effectively. I like to imagine threat intelligence is at the center of a web, and we have all these little lines going out to different departments that we interact with. Next, we're going to address common challenges faced in implementing threat intelligence solutions and how to overcome them. So while threat intelligence can significantly enhance your posture, implementation comes with its own set of challenges. So we're going to discuss a few of those. One of them is data overload. One of the primary challenges is the sheer volume of threat data that needs to be processed. Let's take, for example, this webinar. If you aren't familiar with threat intelligence, this is a lot of information that I'm giving to you very quickly. And with numerous threat feeds and sources, organizations and individuals on a team can quickly become overwhelmed with the amount of information that we're ingesting. Next is false positives. High volumes of false positives can bog down security teams, making it difficult to identify genuine threats. And this can lead to alert fatigue, where critical alerts might be overlooked. You have integration issues. Integrating tools with existing security infrastructure can be challenging and time consuming, and compatibility issues between different systems can hinder the flow of information. Lack of skilled personnel is another one. Effective threat intelligence requires skilled analysts who can interpret this data in a reasonable amount of time, make informed decisions, and disseminate that to key stakeholders in a format that they can use. And there's often a shortage of such skilled personnel in the industry. Finally, we have resource constraints. This is one that we're all familiar with in almost every department of IT. It's a challenge to get funding sometimes, but smaller organizations may struggle, especially with limited budget and resources, making it challenging to invest in comprehensive threat intelligence solutions. So how can we overcome some of these obstacles? Well, we would start with prioritization and filtering. You want to implement robust filtering and prioritization mechanisms to manage data overload. Establishing priority intel requirements, or PIRs, in the direction phase can help here, and it's a great place to start. But you can also use automated tools to filter out low priority alerts and focus on high risk threats. Next is seamless integration. I know this one sounds kind of idealistic because obviously we would choose to always have threat intelligence solutions that offer seamless integration with our existing infrastructure, but try to remember to do it wherever possible. And consider using open standards and APIs to facilitate integration and data sharing between different systems. Continuous training and development. Invest in these programs for your security personnel. Encourage them to stay updated with the latest threat intelligence techniques and tools. Providing hands-on training from more senior analysts or enrolling them in certification programs can help bridge that skills gap. Another is leveraging managed services. For organizations with limited resources, you may want to consider using managed threat intelligence services. Outsource the parts of the work if it becomes too overwhelming. These services can provide access to expert analysts and comprehensive threat intelligence without the need for significant in-house investment. It may not always be as personally tailored to your specific needs as something in-house may be, but we should acknowledge that it may be an avenue of success. Last is collaboration and information sharing. Again, fostering sharing information and intelligence within your organization and external partners. It's important to participate in the threat intelligence communities and industry groups to gain insights and share that knowledge. And there's a lot of open source and free things out there that you can use. So we're gonna move on to best practices for beginners to effectively implement threat intelligence. First suggestion is to start small. Begin with a focused approach by selecting a few high-value threat intelligence sources that are relevant to your organization. As you become more comfortable, you can gradually expand that to include additional sources and tools. Define clear objectives. Clearly define what you want to achieve with your threat intelligence. Establish specific goals such as improving incident response times, identifying and mitigating vulnerabilities, or enhancing threat hunting capabilities. Next is leverage automation. Utilize automation tools to streamline data collection, analysis, and dissemination. Automation helps reduce the manual workload on analysts and ensures an increase in timely delivery. Focus on actionable intelligence. Ensure that the threat intelligence you gather is actionable. It should provide clear guidance on what actions to take, recommendations to mitigate threats. You want to avoid getting bogged down by irrelevant or low priority information. Utilizing free sources. There's an abundance of free information out there and open source tools that can assist any threat intelligence program from very young to very mature programs. Collaborate with peers. Join threat intelligence sharing communities and industry groups to collaborate. Sharing information and insights with others can enhance your understanding of the overall threat landscape and improve your defenses. And finally, we have measure and refine. You're going to need to continuously measure the effectiveness of your threat intelligence program and then refine your approach based off of these measurements. And this is where the phase 6 of the threat intelligence lifecycle feedback can be priceless. Finally, we're going to move on to some examples of practical application of threat intelligence that can be executed. So for this practical application slide, we're going to start with a particular focus on visualizing and prioritizing threat actor TTPs using the MITRE ATT&CK Navigator. Sometimes during these webinars and presentations, I find that a lot of the information is theoretical without leaving the audience with information that they can take back to their company and execute. And this section is dedicated to trying to avoid that. So as we all know, we're in a constant battle against threat actors, and it's crucial to have clarity and precision in our defensive strategies. So even though many of you may be familiar with MITRE ATT&CK Matrix, we'll touch on it briefly to set the stage for the main discussion around ATT&CK Navigator and the creation of heat maps. So this is the MITRE ATT&CK Matrix. It's a knowledge base of adversary tactics and techniques based on real-world observations, and it's used to understand the behaviors of threat actors to improve detection, response, and defense strategies. The matrix is organized into columns representing different stages of an adversary's attack, known as tactics, and each tactic represents a specific goal that the attacker is trying to achieve, such as initial access, execution, or persistence. Within each tactic, there are multiple techniques that describe the various methods that adversaries use to achieve their goals. For example, under initial access, you have techniques such as drive-by compromise, exploit public-facing applications, or phishing. And the attack matrix is a framework that helps organizations identify gaps in their defenses, map out the tactics and techniques used by threat actors, and prioritize their security efforts based on the most relevant threats to their environment. And this is particularly evident when we employ the use of the MITRE ATT&CK Navigator, which the link is provided here. So a brief overview of the ATT&CK Navigator for those who might not use it often or have never used it. It's an interactive web-based application designed to take the attack matrix and turn it into a customizable canvas. The Navigator's strength lies in its ability to create layers, which are essentially filters, that allow us to map out an organization's exposure to specific threat actor behaviors. And the aspect that we'll concentrate on today is one of the Navigator's features of creating a heat map. It's about transforming data into a visual representation where the colors can reflect the urgency and frequency of specific TTPs used by adversaries in our industry. And as we dive into this process, I want you to keep in mind that the goal is not just to visualize these threats, but then prioritize and act upon them. The heat map is going to be our guide, highlighting what to defend against with the limited resources that we all face. So hopefully I don't move through this too quickly, but we are on a schedule. So you're going to start by creating create new layer within the Navigator, and we're going to select Enterprise Attack. This opens up a comprehensive page where all the tactics and techniques are listed. And to navigate, we can start by selecting individual techniques or sub-techniques. This can be done by clicking individually or selecting entire columns if you so choose. Moving on to the more refined controls with selection. Here the search and multi-select function is particularly useful. When you click on the magnifying glass icon, it provides a search interface, and you can look for specific techniques, threat groups, software mitigations, campaigns, and data sources. For the purpose of this demonstration, we're going to search for a threat actor from the list. If you're not able to see this, I'm simply searching Lazarus for Lazarus Group, which is a well-known threat actor. And these are all the TTPs that MITRE has identified as being part of Lazarus Group. So we're going to click the select button. And when we do that, it opens up the technique controls panel here, and it becomes interactive. Here we're going to select the scoring icon, which resembles a bar graph, and we're going to put in a drop-down menu appears so that you can assign a numerical score. And for our heat map, we're just going to simply standardize this by assigning a score of 1 to each technique. As you can see, it immediately applies a visual representation, and they're going to light up in red. To refine this, I like to go to the layer controls and the painter's palette in the color setup. You can select your color gradient here. I prefer to go to green to red. I think it's a little more intuitive for understanding threat sensitivity, so we're going to go there. And as we finalize this layer setup, you can click on the layer information icon and change any things like the name and the description as well. So in the top left corner of the Navigator interface, you'll observe our current layer in one tab, and you can add additional tabs adjacent to this. So for the sake of this presentation, I've gone through and created multiple layers already from different threat actors. The first is Lazarus Group, we have Turla Group, Scattered Spider, and APT28. So the next phase of this, the pivotal moment in the process, arrives when we aggregate these individual layers into a single comprehensive view. And this is achieved by opening one more tab, but instead of starting from scratch, we're going to select Create Layers from Other Layers. And this will open a drop-down menu with numerous options. And we're going to select the domain, the version that we used, and then we can, in the score expression section, there's an equation where we sum the scores from the individual layers, which are represented by letters at the top and on the side here. And we're going to combine A, B, C, and D together to synthesize the data into a single operational pane. Again, it defaults to red to green, so I'm going to change that again to the presets and go to green to red. think it's a little more intuitive. So now you have a scoring system for each of the overlapping TTPs for any of these threat actors. And the utility of this heat map may be clear to some immediately, but it's also likely old news to some of the audience. And this is a great way to help prioritize what TTPs are going to be important in the industry. Now, you can really take it a step further by combining multiple layers from lots of threat actors in your industry that you have identified as relevant to you. I've done that already. I've created a layer with many threat actors, and this shows you, paints a picture of the most prominent TTPs, the most likely ones that are being exploited by threat actors, again, in your industry or relevant to your vertical. So what does it look like if you want to action these? Well, imagine that you combined all these TTPs of threat actors in your industry, and you created a heat map, something like this. The best way that I have found is to put this into an Excel spreadsheet. I know it sounds really simple, but with the heat map as our guide, we can make data-driven decision makings to allocate our resources a little better. So here's an example. You can export the heat map into Excel. You can score the TTPs based on and sort them. And then you can provide some sort of analysis. You know, you can go through with your security engineers and your architects and your SecOps team, and you can score, you know, what do we think our logging is like for this TTP? What do we think the prevention is or our response to it? And you can come up with an average score. And then you can sort that information. And now you have a gap analysis of sorts to provide some improvement actions based on the most likely TTPs, as well as your score based off of people that you work with, your employees and coworkers, on where we have the most gaps available. So to close, I want to summarize a few of the key takeaways. Threat intelligence is crucial in today's cybersecurity landscape. It provides visibility into potential threats before they strike. And by understanding the TTPs of attackers, we can enhance our defenses and reduce the risk of successful breaches. There are different types of threat intelligence, including strategic and operational and tactical. They can be gathered from different sources such as OSINT. Each type and source provides unique insights that can help our organizations better understand and respond to threats. Effective threat intel requires the right tools and technologies, such as TIPS, SIMs, EDRs. Integrating these tools with existing security frameworks and leveraging automation can enhance the efficiency and effectiveness of this. Implementing threat intelligence comes with challenges such as data overload, integration issues, resource constraints, and prioritizing and filtering this data, we can ensure seamless integration. For beginners, start small, focus on actionable intelligence, and define clear objectives, utilize free resources, and collaborate with your peers. Make sure to measure the effectiveness of your threat intelligence program and refine your approach based on the results. I'd like to thank everybody for participating in today's webinar. I know I moved through that last section a little quickly. If you'd like to reach out to me, I'm happy to go over more things in detail and provide any answers that I can. For now, if you have questions or would like to discuss anything, this is the time. And feel free to reach out with me or to me on LinkedIn after this presentation.
Thank you very much, Mark, for delivering such an insightful, informative, and engaging session. We found the webinar very engaging and hope it was valuable for you as well. Before we begin with the Q&A, I would like to inform all the attendees that this session is in sync with EC Council's CTIA program. EC Council CTIA maps to many roles in the industry like threat intelligence analyst, threat analysis and reporting, vulnerability management and threat intelligence, intelligence engineer, etc. Anyone with a CTIA certification is eligible for 9,000 plus job vacancies globally with an average salary of $75,000 per annum. If you're interested to know more, kindly take part in the poll that's going to be conducted now. Let us know your preferred mode of training and we will reach out to you soon. So, Mark, should we proceed with the question and answer?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay. So our first question is, what are the initial steps an organization should take to start leveraging threat intelligence effectively?
I would say that the first steps would be establishing your PIRs. Being able to identify the assets that you need to protect that are most critical in your business processes or your most important vendors, and how to protect all these things. That's going to guide your entire threat intelligence program to help you know what sources you need and what's relevant, and help you with filtering that down for the analysts so they know what to provide and what to look for.
Thank you for answering that, Mark. So I'll take next question. Is sandboxing a major part of threat intelligence?
It can be. It can be, definitely. Part of threat intelligence is investigation, and so there are tools out there where if you are identifying a malicious IP or a domain, use it to ensure that you're protected when you're researching this information, and it helps to provide more context, potentially if you're writing a report and disseminating that out to key stakeholders.
Thank you for answering that. I'll take next question. How do you check threat intelligence received and check which internal system impacted by the vulnerability? Can you help name a few tools to help identify system impacted by vulnerability identified in threat intelligence information?
So these are going to be your vulnerability management tools. They should be scanning the network and helping you with that process, as well as the vulnerability management team. One example is Tenable. I know Tenable is a tool that can be used, that's going to be scanning for that, and you're able to, within that tool, search specifically for CVEs, and it will identify assets that you have that might be impacted by it. But my best guide for that would be utilizing a tool, engaging with vulnerability management team, and yeah, doing a little bit of research. Engaging another team might be business resilience. Business resilience should have a list of your most critical vendors and assets to help you out.
Thank you, Mark. I'll take the last question. When a risk is mitigated, how long does it take to be considered harmful or meaningless?
I suppose that's going to depend on your organization as well as what it impacts. Part of threat intelligence is staying up to date with current events, and there are certain situations where the risk can be mitigated based off of a certain patching threshold. Maybe there's an exploit that came out and when it was first revealed, 50% of your assets were vulnerable or something, or only 50% were patched and had the latest updates so that they were protected. And that threshold is going to be defined within your organization. Maybe after 80% or 90%, you can lower the risk score, but it also depends on what's going on in the threat landscape. You know, are there new changes? Are there patches that are being released? Things of that nature. So it really kind of depends on the situation. I know that's not the most helpful answer, but you know, if you're aware of the intelligence that's coming out and you're providing that information to the rest of your departments, it can help them make decisions, and you'll be able to decide at what point you believe as an organization that your risk has been lowered based off of your current security posture and the new controls that you've implemented.
Thank you again to our wonderful speaker, Mark, for answering those questions and for the great presentation and the knowledge shared with our global audience. It was a pleasure to have you with us, and we are looking for more and more sessions with you, Mark.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Before we conclude the webinar, Mark, would you like to give a small message to our audience?
I would say that if anybody is interested in threat intelligence, it's a great career field. I think that it's very fulfilling, and I really enjoy being able to help my company and other teams be more effective in what they do. It's a very interesting thing for me, and again, very rewarding. And if anybody has any questions or would like to discuss anything in more detail, like I said, please feel free to contact me because this is something that I really enjoy. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Mark.